Hello, my name is Peter Parfitt. Welcome to New Brick Workshop. I think most people now realise that with the UJK Parf guide system made by Axminster Tools Machinery, that you can make a perfect cutting station for doing 90-degree and 45-degree cuts. But a lot of people want to do 30-degree and 60-degree cuts. I've looked at ways of doing it using the normal rectangular pattern of holes on an MFT top, and it doesn't really quite work. But now I have a solution. You make up your own new MFT top or your new track saw cutting station using the isometric approach. And this video is about the isometric MFT top, which I've created here. Now, the sort of thing that you can do is to make pretty good 60-degree and 30-degree cuts. Now, this is near perfect. Now I'm now going to show you how I went about making the top. I'm afraid my voice is going, and if it survives to the end of the video, well, super duper. And needless to say, I'm cutting this blank piece out on my track saw cutting station. This piece of board I'm reusing, and I've actually filled about 7 holes here. Now before drilling any holes, it's a good idea to put on whatever protection you want on your new MFT top. I'm going to use some Osmo, and now you can probably see where I filled these holes. Now in order to get this laid out correctly, I've produced a drawing which is available for anyone if they wish it. And it's important to get the first holes in the right place. And so I'm just marking where they should go. In order to allow me to do the drilling, I'm going to put this wood underneath the new top. And that will help me get clamps in place and things like that. So I've got my position for the very first hole, and I'm going to drill that now. So there's my very first hole. Take a 3mm pin, and I'm now going to locate this. Now, these pins are tight in a 3mm hole. They designed to be tight, and if you've got a brand new Parf guide system, then you'll find that the holes in the Parf stick are going to be slightly tight as well. But once you've used the 3mm drill through those holes once, then they'll be spot on. Now the way to get this parallel is I'm using my steel rule, and I've lifted the Parf stick and I've put it under here so it's pushing against the shaft of that 3mm locating pin. And I've read the scale here, it says it's 68. So I'm now going down here where at the moment there is no hole, and I'm just going to move that so that my ruler is touching the pin here, which is sticking through the Parf stick, and I'm going to move that until that is also 68. If you want the most accurate setup, I advise everyone to use clamps in. And once you've got a hole in, down there we've put a pin, and now I'm putting a pin there, and that helps those clamps. Right, so that is the first row of holes done. Now we're going to take the second Parf stick, pin there, pin there. Now that's 10 units along there, and each of these Parf sticks are 10 units in length, and I'm now going to put this third pin through there. And that pin now will guarantee that that triangle stays absolutely symmetrical, and 60 degrees, 60 degrees and 60 degrees. And this is the start of our isometric formation. So that's now in place, and I'll just make sure, yep, free movement of that pin, which is fine. And now we're going to continue to do our holes. And always when you're doing holes, you've got a pin here, you've got a clamp there, we've got a clamp there. Just behind the clamp where you can't see it, there's a hole in the Parf stick. I'm going to drill there first. And as soon as I've drilled there, that means I can transfer either that pin or that other pin to there. And I'm going to drill the rest of these holes here. That's our first angled lot of holes. I'm now going to move and do the other side. Right, I've now put this Parf stick so that the hole there is dead center. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divisions. And I'm going to put this pin in here. Remember, these pins only need to go in a little bit. So that's 5 there, and I count down here 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm now looking for a hole that coincides with a hole through that Parf stick, and there we are. I've now located this Parf stick in that part of the pattern. So I've got one going that way. I'm now going to get one going in that direction. And I can fix this Parf stick in place. Now, if I wanted to verify that this is in the right position before I started the drilling, what I can do is to take that out from there, and I can now put this Parf stick into play, like so. So that's fixed. And the equivalent hole down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is just here, I should be able to put this pin in. And there we go. So that's now, if you like, guaranteed that this is absolutely spot on. I'm going to clamp this and I'm going to drill. So that's those holes drilled. Now what I want to do is to move this over. Now, in order to make things a little clearer, what I've done is I've put a red line here and a red line there through the 2 lines of 3mm holes which go like so. And I put a green line here and here, so that gives you an idea of where we are. Now, with this pattern, I've created this first row with a Parf stick just laid like so. That could be done with the second row, but it would be slightly moved to the left or right. But the third row and the 5th row and the 7th row would be dead in line with the original. So I can use this property now by placing a Parf stick here, and that will reproduce a row of holes just there. And just as before, we're going to define its position by putting in a pin, one there, and don't forget the pins do not need to go very far in, just enough to register the position. Now, what could I do to verify that that's in the right place? There's the center. I can put this pin through here, and it's just sitting in there at the moment. And eyeballing, looking down here, I should be able to see that there's a hole here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 divisions along, and it lines up precisely with the hole that's just there. And you could do a second verification if you wished by putting this across here, and again making sure, yes, and that goes through like so. We're going to use the same technique now with the next row of holes down. We've got anchor points under there and there. Technically there's one there as well, and there's one there. Now, I didn't bother to clamp the Parf stick in place this time because with 3 anchor points I felt it was not going to move at all. I've now put a blue line through these horizontal rows, and the 3 of them we've done so far. The original one, then this one, and then we finish with that one. So I'm going to set this up so that I've got this through there, and I could choose either one of these holes, that one for example, or this one here. And if it's been done properly, these should line up. So that Parf stick is in place. Again, I do not need to clamp them. Now, for this final set of holes which are going along here, I've only got 2 pre-drilled holes to set this Parf stick in place. So what I've done is I've introduced the second Parf stick. As I've only got 3 3mm pins, I've put a 3mm drill there. That's keeping that in position. And this third 3mm pin is here. And I'm going to clamp this in place now. So that's now all of the 3mm holes drilled, and there's a 3mm hole at each of these intersections. Right, now we're going to use the 20mm block with the 20mm cutter in it, and we've got it in the position where we use the 3mm pins to help position it. And it's dead easy to set up. All you do is you just feel and get the tip of the drill just poking into one of the 3mm holes. Then you use a pair of the 3mm guide pins, and it should be easy to find the 3mm holes which sits just under them. And remember, you don't need to push these all the way in, they just need to go in about 3mm, and that then holds that absolutely rock solid. Now the key thing to remember is that you must use dust extraction when you use this cutter. And there's the first hole, and then one goes along doing alternate holes all the way along. I now have to switch the cutter over to the second position so that I can then use the bench dogs to position the guide block. Well, there's that full pattern of holes. You could choose to put holes in here if you wished. I've decided I wouldn't, but you could if you wished. But there's one more enhancement I'm going to do to this, which applies to the normal sort of rectangular top that you might use for your MFT3 or your track saw cutting station. Now, as it comes with this design of top, when you put the guide rail against your two vertical Parf dogs or Parf super dogs, and you do your saw cut, it's going to go right through a set of holes. And that is also true on the rectilinear top as well. So in order to overcome this, what I want to do is to offset the position of these two dog holes so they're this way by a little bit. I've worked out that if I move the holes that the Parf super dogs are going to go in, the ones fore and aft, over by about half the distance between this column and this column, that everything will work out as I want it. So what I've discovered is that I can slide a Parf stick under these two Parf locators which are there, and I can now move the Parf stick this way in order to get the hole at this end exactly where I want it. Now bear in mind, underneath the top there is a flange on the MFT3 which is 16mm wide. So that means the nearest that I can allow the centre of a hole to go is 16 plus 10. So that's 26. Well, to be on the safe side, I'm going to make a line at 28. So there's a line at 28. I'm going to do the same down here as well. Now I'm going to move that back into place, and now I can choose exactly where I want to drill this hole. Now I'm now going to clamp this in place. Now we've now got a working top, and so we can use the Festool clamps to get this spot on. So that's it, held in place. They're pushed up against these locator dogs which are in the holes here, and I'm going to use the 3mm drill guide to get this bit done. Now the reason we need the 3 holes I'm drilling is that I want to be able to use the guide block to make sure that the one hole I'm going to drill is absolutely spot on. And now it's a simple job of using the 20mm guide block and a pair of the 3mm guide pins. So that guide block's held nicely in place. I've put my extraction port on there. And I must say the Bluetooth switch, which I've placed on the end of this hose, is absolutely brilliant. Right, there are my 2 Parf super dogs in place. If I now put my guide rail against here, you can see that my kerf line is going to be along there and nowhere near any of the holes. So that's it. There is the Isometric MFT3 top. And now it's time to test this. What I've got here is I've got a piece of plywood, which is our test piece. I've got a pair of Parf super dogs here, and I've got a pair of ordinary low-profile Parf dogs at the end there. This is just a supporting piece to support the guide rail. On goes the guide rail. The wood's pushed firmly back against there. My saw's set up, and away I go. Now, I don't know if you could see, but I could see that is absolutely perfect. Absolutely spot on. But we can do more. Now what I've got set up here is I've put a pair of these small Parf dogs in place. Note they go from there and there. So you need to make sure you get this right because it's very easy to get that wrong. And I'm going to put everything else back in the same way as it was before. The guide rail goes in place as before. My kerf line will be in the same place as before. My stock is pushed against those bench dogs. Now the theory is that this is 30 degrees. That's set on 30 degrees. And I know it's not a very big gadget, but there we go. Now we can have some fun. What I've done is I've taken my stock and I've turned it over. I'm conscious of that there, so I've got to make sure that doesn't interfere. And I'm going to put the offcut here to act as an end stop. And I've really got to make sure that's held firmly in place. So there we go, that's firmly held in place. Now it may look a bit elaborate. Well, it's elaborate because I really want to show you how accurate this is. So I'm now going to make a series of pieces and we're then going to see if they fit together. That's one. What I now do is flip this over. Do the next one. Right, now's the test. Let's see if they can come together nicely. Well, frankly, I think for something you can produce on the MFT3, I think that's pretty good. So there you have it. That is the isometric MFT3 top. You can cut 90 degrees, 30 degrees, and 60 degrees very accurately. Thank you very much for watching.